Welcome to the Live Love Ministries podcast, a place where we share thoughts, insights, and experiences from the mission field. I'm Eric.
I'm Brittany.
And I'm Julia.
And we're the Live Love Ministries team. We're back on the Live Love Ministries podcast. I'm Eric.
I'm Brittany.
And I'm Julia.
We tried to recreate our opening to see if we still sounded the same. We are sitting here at the Ministry Center just thinking and planning and getting ready for the Christmas season. And this is before we get into our episode, a short plug for Christmas in the Villages. If you've never been around our ministry, or been a part of our ministry, one of the biggest things we do each year is this event called Christmas in the Villages. And so if you want to know more about how you can be involved with that, we need a lot of help with it. You can go to our website, liveloveministries.org, check out Christmas in the Villages. Even if you go back to our old podcast archives, if you will, there's actually an episode on Christmas in the Villages. And this is the 13th year we've done it. Man, it's been awesome. And so, anyway, just wanted to give a short plug of that before we get into our episode. So, we're continuing our season. The season is called I Didn't Know That. Right? What do you guys think so far? Have you enjoyed it?
Yeah.
I know we've only done like one full episode. We did the intro and then we did one full episode. And I really have enjoyed it. I've learned a lot still. Even though like we kind of mapped this out a couple of years ago, wanting to try to have these conversations. We've been able to do quite a bit more research, if you will, and conversation about it and talking with other people about it as well. And so I didn't know that. And so our hope was that we would share things with you that you did not know. So that when you know better, you do better. And if you're a follower of Jesus, as many of our listeners are, that you would better walk with Jesus and love the people that God has put in your life, and that you would better love the people. Like if you're a part of our ministry, or like you would better love the people and know more about the people that we are called to serve as well, if that makes any sense. Like it just simply put, we know better, do better, whether, whatever that might look like. And so today's episode, I'm going to let Julia introduce it. We hope you're ready to hear. Oh, I did want to say this. If you listened to the last podcast episode and learned something, we'd like to hear about that. Like what was helpful for you, okay? And if you listened to it and thought we could have done a better job at explaining something, let us know that as well. Because I'm sure we could have. Like we're not experts, right? Like we're not coming across as like we know everything about any of these subjects. And so if there's something we could have done better, as a Native person, if you listened and you're like, it would have been better if you presented it this way. We want to know that as well. We want to do better, even in our advocating and our sharing what we know and what we've experienced and those around us have experienced. And that's what we just want to do. We want to be advocates. So anyway, Julia, why don't you go ahead and intro a little bit about this episode?
Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about appropriation versus appreciation, and just how we can respect and appreciate Native culture in general. In a minute, Brittany's going to share some definitions for those words. But basically, I just thought this was interesting while I was researching the other day. This is from Illuminative, but data suggests that around 80% of Americans know nothing about Native people, and that 87% of schools don't teach about Native American history past the year 1900, which is just insane. So thank you for listening. And I feel like what people do know about Native people, they don't always handle that information well, and the information that they think they know is often incorrect. And so we're going to talk some more about that today, and hopefully by the end of the episode you'll have some things maybe in your life that maybe you say or do that you can take a look at and change. And as always, we're not experts. We're going to point you to some resources that are Native ran, because we want you to hear their voices, not ours. But yeah.
So why are we doing it this month though?
Yeah. So November is Native American Heritage Month. And so if you do spend time thinking about Native people, a lot of time it is in November. Even the holidays coming up, Thanksgiving, and a lot of the things that we're going to talk about that aren't so great that people do revolve around football season and sports and
Halloween.
Yeah, Halloween. So just a lot of things that happen in the fall that just make it a great time to talk about these things. And we want to honor Native people, celebrate their culture, and do it in a way that is respectful.
Yeah, and if we are called to work with Native people, and this is where we plant our lives, and for Brittany and I, our children are Native, and we want to do a good job. It would make sense if this is where we are, this is where we live our lives, this is a part of our life, this is our family, and if Native American Heritage Month went by and we didn't say anything. Isn't that kind of silly? Like, we have at least the ability to speak into several people's lives, and people who are connected to our ministry that maybe don't know as much about Native culture. If we didn't take this opportunity then to help and speak in, like, we wouldn't really be doing anything. Like, I feel like we would miss something. Like, we'd be leaving something out, be selling people short if we didn't do a good job of that. If that makes any sense.
Right. And I think sometimes, they're just given the title of Native American Heritage Month, and we're just like, okay, whatever, and we don't really think much about it. But I think by having these conversations, it does bring some things to light, and so it does give everyone the chance to really honor Native people for who they are and in their culture. And if you happen to do some things that are appropriation or that have been offensive, what a great time to change that, to start honoring this month, and then obviously continuing, not just only for the month, but forever.
Yeah, and Julia said that, what'd you say, 80% of people know nothing about
Uh-huh.
Native American culture, heritage, or people in general? Mm-hmm. That's terrible. Like, that's really, really bad. Like, that's very concerning. And then you said 87% of people, what was the other?
87% of schools
don't even teach it after
1900, yeah.
So just, maybe you're completely oblivious, and I don't mean this to make anybody feel dumb, but like, Native people are still here, right? And so there's a lot of history after 1900, a whole lot, and a lot of tribes are still thriving and growing, and a lot are struggling, and things are going on that maybe you don't even know about, and there's opportunities to serve in those areas as well too. So there's a lot that you could take from this. So why don't you define, because somebody may be listening and be like, I have no idea what you're even talking about. What's appropriation mean?
Yeah. Well, specifically, culture appropriation takes place when members of a majority group adopt cultural elements of a minority group in an exploitative, disrespectful, or stereotypical way. And that was from Britannica, so not my made-up definition. From
Britannica, they still make encyclopedias.
Evidently.
Yeah, okay.
Evidently so. So basically, a majority group is using elements of a minority group's culture to exploit them, even if they don't realize it, and be disrespectful or in a stereotypical way.
Yeah. So plain English.
Well, and then, so appreciation, because that's what we're doing, versus appreciation is when someone seeks to understand and learn about another culture in an effort to broaden their perspective and connect with others cross-culturally. So there's obviously a difference, and we're going to go through and give specific examples of some of these things, because sometimes we, say we're having a conversation with someone and they're like, well, I don't mean anything by it. And so it's like, well, right, you probably don't. It's probably not your intention. But if you were doing something that was creating harm to someone, I would hope that you would want to know that. And I would hope that you would want to see how you could do it differently so that you could show appreciation instead of appropriation.
Right.
So we're going to go through some specific things.
So in our case specifically, like what we're kind of speaking to, the majority culture, which would be white, middle class American culture, whatever you want to call it, is taking elements of, in this specific scenario we're talking about, Native culture for their own benefit at the exploitation of the Native culture. Okay.
Correct.
And you maybe think, well, I don't do that. I promise you there's something that we're going to talk about that you can say, oh my, I maybe have done that, or I've allowed that to be done, or I've participated in some form of appropriation. We don't say that to lambaste you or to make you feel terrible about yourself. Again, we want you to know better and thus do better, to honor people well, right? And so, and honor cultures well. And again, once you learn something, like I feel like if you're mature in any way, Like if you're emotionally mature, spiritually mature person, once you know something that you've done that is not okay, your first response shouldn't be to be defensive. And so if you're getting here to this point and you're like, oh man, I don't want to listen to this because they're going to tell me something, then maybe you're the very person that needs to be listening to this, because there's probably going to be something. But don't be defensive. Be a learner, right? Be a learner, be a grower. If you're a Christian, be somebody who understands better people that are created in the image of God and whose life has value and worth. And so, sorry about that background noise. But so yeah, we want it to be that. So be a learner, be a listener, and again, this probably applies to you, right? So,
and I think too, even as you're saying that, like we have also taken a part of things that, you know, we're not proud of, you know, just growing up in the area that we grew up in, and just not that there was anything wrong with the teachers specifically, but the things that they were teaching were wrong. And so we're like coming from the spot of like, we've learned and now we're doing better, not, you know, I can't believe you would ever do that, because there are some things, you know, that I look at this list and I've maybe said something or done something also.
But to be fair, if you are very, very defensive and you were like, no, I'm going to keep doing this, then we might come at you like that. Because there is an aspect, listen, as long as we've been doing what we do, that we've had every kind of response to some, like, because we have cultural training. If you've never been here with us, we have cultural trainings both before you arrive and once you arrive, and then throughout the time you're here. We've had every response you can imagine to that. Like most people are, I should say this, a lot of people are very receptive, and they're like, yeah, that's great. Thanks for telling me that. There are some people who are very defensive, and then there are some people who are defiant. Like defensive is like, okay, I hear you, I'm not, like, whatever, it's not me, it doesn't apply to me. Defiant is, I hear you, I don't care, I'm going to do it my way anyway. We've literally had people say, well, you can tell me that all day long, but I'm still going to do it the way I want to. That's the way I was raised, all right? And so there's been all kinds. And so we're not picking on anybody, but we also know there may be somebody listening who's like, I don't care. Well, that's a problem, right? Like, because there's a deeper underlying issue there. We can't really help you with the deeper underlying issue. See a counselor. So, no, I'm kidding, kind of. All right. All right, Jill, who's going to go first?
I think let's start with one that is like one of the most common things. And I think that would be costumes.
Okay. Just finished Halloween.
Right. So we did just finish Halloween. Maybe we should have done this before Halloween.
Yeah.
But hey, there's lots more Halloweens to come. So you can think through just that for next time or all the years ahead. But there's just no way other to say it other than dressing as a Native person is not acceptable. That would be considered appropriation. And there's many reasons for that. But you can just remember that cultures are not costumes.
Yeah. Culture's not costume. And so it's not just for Halloween, but because Halloween just happened and that's where people dress up. I'm not a huge Halloween person in general. Like, it's just not my jam. I don't like dressing up. But if you are a Halloween person and you do dress up, it is never appropriate to dress up as someone else's culture. And more specifically, it seems like white people have this predisposition to want to dress up as Native people. Not all white people, but I'm saying, but when someone does it, majority of the time it's a white person, right, who does that. And they will generally, stereotypically, what do they put on? A headdress, right? And some kind of brown top. And if it's a guy, sometimes not even a shirt at all. Or the girl might dress up in a very scantily clad looking outfit. And I don't know if that's...
I like that definition.
I don't think I've heard that word before.
Is it
Scantily clad?
Yeah. Our listeners know they're intelligent people.
What does that say about me?
Just be a learner. But okay, I was trying to get away from saying like trying to be overly sexual, a sexualized costume. Okay, and let's just be frank, that's what a lot of people do with it. Like try to dress up as like a sexy Indian kind of person. That's what they would say it would be, right? And that's inappropriate in any way.
Correct.
All right. Do we want to go deeper into that? Why is it?
Well, I feel like costumes and mascots kind of go hand in hand, so we can talk about mascots separately. But I just feel like from a psychological standpoint, they're very harmful. Harvard has done studies on this. Illuminative, which is a Native organization, has done it. So has the American Psychological Association, have all done research on if this affects people. And Illuminative found that sports mascots and costumes increases anxiety, depression, and suicidal ideation among Native American youth. And so it's like, why would, like, no costume is worth causing another human like anxiety, depression, and wanting to take their life? Like, in no way. Like, it doesn't matter like what the theme of the party is, or if you found the perfect outfit. Like, I mean, I feel like that should just be enough, you know, point blank. Like, why would you dress up
as someone else's culture?
As someone else's culture in general, and then even further, knowing that that is going to cause so much psychological, like, mental harm to another person.
Yeah, and I know there's some people listening that are probably eye rolling right now. There's no way that it causes that. It really does. Yeah. And, you know, and I know there's some people listening who are going to say there are people who it doesn't bother them. I met a Native person once. Generally, that's the one Native person they've ever met, and they said it didn't bother them. How would you guys respond to that when they come up with, first of all, they're trying to defend.
Right.
You know, okay. So the root of the issue is, like, I want to be defensive about it. I want to get my way rather than I want to learn or not hurt.
Well, I would say, first of all, that could be true because not all Native people are the same person.
So this goes into a different topic, but yeah.
And so
not all tribes are the same, believe it or not. Yeah.
They can have different thoughts and opinions just like anyone else does. And so it is possible that there is somebody that it doesn't offend. But largely, it does. And so you don't always just side with the one person who already suits what you're doing.
Case. Yeah.
You listen collectively and hear those, and if it hurts one person, then that should be enough.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And why would you intentionally do it? Right. Like, it'd be one thing if it hurt that one person, you didn't know it, and now you know it. Then why would you be like, well, I still want to do it, even if because it didn't hurt this one person. And it hurts these 10,000 over here, I'm still going to do it because the one person said it could. Like, that just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Right. It's backward thinking. Mm-hmm. But you brought up mascots, too. And this is a touchy subject because as a parent of Native children, we have a multi-ethnic family, not just Native children. We have background of different. But, like, this next one I'm going to ask you about and want us to talk about is one that kind of hits home for me. Like you said, mascots. So we're thinking sports teams, right? Mm-hmm. And that's not where necessarily I'm going, but so you have sports teams. The Washington football team is now Washington Commanders, their former name. The Cleveland baseball team, the Guardians now. The Atlanta Braves, you know, they even have a little, whatever they call it.
The chant.
Whatever it's called, you know. And so all that is what we're talking about. Like, so you're hearing that, that's what we're talking about. Like, it's not, how do I try to say this without it sounding, I don't mean to sound like a jerk. Like, your little thing you're comfortable with is not the exception. Mm-hmm. Like, just because you liked the Washington Redskins when they were the Redskins and you think it's totally cool, we're still talking about that. Like, that's still you. Or if you like the Atlanta Braves and it's like, and you walk around doing what do they even call it? The chop? I don't even know. I can't remember now. Somebody's probably listening and be like, you're an idiot. How do you not know what it is? And I'm a sports fan, but I like the Diamondbacks and we were in the World Series. And so.
Yeah, we were.
Yeah, so Arizona has a baseball team, believe it or not. And we were actually really good. But, like, that's what we're talking about, right? Like, would we agree?
Yeah.
The Cleveland Guardians used to be called the Cleveland Indians and had this goofy looking Native guy with a half headdress on us. It just that's what we're talking about. So sure, there may be people who it doesn't offend, it doesn't bother, but the vast majority of people it does. Mm-hmm. And we're saying this not just from the research. Okay, like, yes, we're sharing research with you, but we could have people sitting around our table with us who are in our ministry who would also say that is not cool. Like, they may not come out and know all of the way of saying why it hurts them so deep, but they would be like, I feel some way about that. Like, I feel hurt by that. I feel somehow about that. You know? So that's one. But the one I was talking about hitting closer home to me is like school mascots. Like elementary school, middle school mascots drive me nuts when they're named such and such Indians or such and such Choctaws or such and such,
Chiefs.
whatever, chiefs, especially if it's in a 100% white community. Like, you could see maybe like on a school where the Native people are all there and they choose the name of their school, but like we're talking about way on the East Coast and some of those communities that do not have Native people any longer because they were driven out and killed, and they'll have such and such school Indians, and then in that school they'll have each class as like a tribe. Is this what we're talking about? So let's throw this out there. Is this what we're talking about as appropriation?
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
And so
it most people, when you would have this conversation, they would go back to, well, it's appreciation of the people or whatever. But honestly, nobody, for the most part, knows why their school mascot is whatever it is, and they're not using it in a way that honors the culture, which would be appreciation. And so when you're doing the headdresses and
by the way, most of the time, those headdresses and those images are stereotypes. It's not like this is a picture of a certain one, right? Is that what you were going to say?
Yeah, that's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
It's, it is a stereotype because this is coming in a later episode, but not all Native people are the same, and not all tribes are the same, and not all tribes have headdresses. And so
and not all tribes live in teepees.
And all that kind of stuff. And so it's like when you say, hey, this is my tribe of people, and let's go to the pep rally and represent the Cherokees in our headdresses. Like, that's not even true because Cherokees didn't wear headdresses, and it shows that you know nothing of the culture, so you're not appreciating it. And then when you say things like, let's go to the powwow, like, those things are just all absolutely inappropriate. And it's because you are not doing it in a way that is appreciating it. It does the opposite. It does the opposite. It's hurtful.
Yeah. And so I could give you an example. There's people in our lives who their children go to schools like that, and they have called and said, what should we do? And so we have to walk through those. Like, what do you do if your child goes? Like, it doesn't really happen out here where we are near as often, but like say on the East Coast or back in the eastern part of the country or Midwest or wherever. So what do they do? Like, what would you say? Somebody calls you and says, my child goes to such and such school, the mascot is Indian, and every such and such day they have to wear, I don't know, a shirt with a native head on it, or they have to wear a headdress on such and such days, on school spirit days. No. What do you do?
We're not participating. Number one, we're not participating. And number two, it shouldn't be that big of a deal to change the mascot.
Yeah. People act like it's just like an act of Congress to change an elementary school mascot in a small town.
Right.
Like, it shouldn't be that big of a deal.
Pick something else.
Yeah.
Pick something else.
Yeah.
It's
not once you know better, you do better.
Yeah.
Right? And so I would encourage you, if you're a principal, listen to this, somebody, a PTO member, a parent, and you're hearing this and you're like, man, this really, I didn't realize that, or I didn't make a lot of sense to me before. Now you get it. Be that voice. Like, you want to be appreciative, like you want to do cultural appreciation, then advocate for that, right? Would you agree to that? Yeah. If your kid is ordered to wear a such and such shirt on such and such a day that is not right, then don't do it. Like, let them take the letter grade and show them there are more important things. Letter grade deduct, like say if they get deducted off of, well, if you don't participate, you don't get full credit. Sorry. Then take the B for the class. And stand for what's right, then follow along with the crowd, right? Yeah. Would you agree to that?
I would.
Yeah.
And I would say, I'll just be vulnerable in saying this. We don't have many of those types of issues this way. But I will say there was a time, several years back, when one of our daughters was in a play at school. It was Peter Pan. And I don't know if, I'm sure everybody's familiar with Peter Pan, but in it, they use the word Indian
multiple times.
Over again.
This is here in Arizona.
Right. Yeah. Over and over and over again. Now, that is what the play says. Like, copyright, it does say that word. But our daughter was very uncomfortable with it. And she went and asked the teacher or the director of the play, like, could we change this and not use that word specifically? And the teacher was like, no, we can't because it's copyrighted. This is what we're going to have to do. Basically, we're doing this regardless. I understand we don't like that word either, but we're going to do it anyway because of this, whatever. And so she went ahead and participated in the play because she wanted to be in the play, but I think looking back on it now,
She feels really dumb.
Yeah, I wish we as parents would have stepped in and been like,
no,
we're not doing this,
And I think it's okay to say this, that our daughter saying that was Native. She was asking, as a Native person, this is not okay with me.
Right.
And the school, kind of trumped that with, well, that's copyright. But you can't, it's kids playing a play. They say the wrong words all the time, in a play. And so, just they, you know what I mean. And so, and me too. I look back on it and I cringe. Why did I not, this was 10 years ago or so, and why did I not be like, nah, this ain't happening.
Yeah.
You're going to have a missing spot in this play. Yeah. And so, even that's Peter Pan. That's not that innocent, that's not okay. And so wherever you are, if you're a big sports fan, I'm not telling you to abandon your sports team necessarily, but maybe. It's just sports. I love them, but it is just sports. If your kid goes to a certain school and that's the only choice they have, I would say there are ways to advocate and do the right thing in there. You can be in it, but not of it. Does that make sense? And you can be that voice. Who cares if you're the voice that ruffles feathers from time to time, if you ruffle them for the right reason? Some people are like, I just don't want to be that one that's always being hard to deal with. You're not being hard to deal with. You're advocating for people. Yeah. That's a good thing. Mm-hmm. And if other people don't like it, so be it. Yeah,
for sure.
Okay, next. I think we could get wound up on this topic and keep going. So, the final thoughts on those. Costumes, whether it's Halloween, mascots, school, Christian schools, Thanksgiving things where people dress up as, what are they called, pilgrims, and Native people. Just stop that. Just stop. If you're a Christian school and you do that, just stop, please. It does not honor the culture, and it does not paint an accurate picture of what actually even happened, number one. So, costume, mascot, it's appropriation, not appreciation. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
That sound good?
And the last thing I'll say on that real quick is, over 100 tribes have passed resolutions against the use of Native imagery and mascots.
That's a good one.
And so it's you can say that people that are okay with it, but literally over 100 tribes are asking for this. And if somebody is asking you to do it out of respect, you should listen to them. You don't get to say they don't have a right to be offended that.
Or to
just listen to them.
Just value their own culture. They have a right to value their own culture, especially when it has the history behind it too.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Okay. Where are we going next?
We can kind of just talk about some sayings and why they're not okay. Because there are a lot of things that we just say in our everyday language that we don't realize are offensive. So, for example, I think we might have mentioned this earlier, but one thing a lot of times people will say is, "Oh, let's go have a powwow,"
Yeah. Let's go sit down and have a powwow.
Yeah. But in Native culture, powwows aren't where people have meetings. It's not oh, let's come together and discuss something, but it's a celebration of music and the dances in their language. It's a celebration of their culture where everybody is coming together and celebrating who they are and who their culture is, not a meeting. And so
if they were having a meeting in Native culture, they'd say, "We're having a meeting."
Yeah.
So they'll say, "Let's have a meeting."
Yeah. I feel sometimes even people will try to use it with us to kind of sound cooler, "Oh, we should have a powwow," and you're just no, don't use that just because I know Native people. You're making it worse.
Yeah. So you mean to say we're going to go have a celebration of music and culture? And to be honest, a actual powwow is beautiful. It's awesome. It's
so
a cool
fun.
It's a cool thing to go to, and if you're ever honored enough to go, depending on what kind it is and where it is, if you're allowed to go and honored enough to go, that's a really special time. Right. And so when somebody minimalizes it to a meeting about what we're going to eat for dinner, you're wait a minute, we're not on the same page here. Mm-hmm. These things are beautiful celebrations and some of that has been passed down from generation to generation, and the regalia that goes along with it, it's just beautiful.
Right.
And so to minimize it is just silly, I think. And so yeah, know better, do better. So when you're going to have a meeting, let's say, let's have a meeting or let's have a conversation.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yes.
Next one.
Another one is being the low man on the totem pole. And it's just funny, like not all tribes use totem poles. So this is just this overarching assumption and stereotype, and just, I don't know, so many sayings that you just don't know what they even mean.
Yeah. And then there's one too that people use, like guys usually guys usually use this one when they're working, and they'll say something to the effect of, "There's too many chiefs, not enough Indians."
Yeah.
And I can kind of makes a lump in my throat, like, oh no, I'm gonna throw up my mouth a little bit, just because they usually will say it around the like this shouldn't be saying it, much less in the earshot of somebody else, that it would really, really be hurtful to. Okay.
Right.
What are some other ones?
One I really hate is Indian giver.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I should even have to explain why I hate it, but I think sometimes things are just said so commonly that it's like we don't even realize what we're saying or how hurtful that is. And in reality, I mean, if you know the history of the United States, you know that the U.S. is the one who came and took the land and made treaties with Native people, and are always the ones who didn't
went back on their word. Yeah.
And so it's not even a true statement to even be using that. It's obviously derogatory.
Yeah. An Indian giver is like, when you're saying that, you're saying like the person you're talking to is not honest. Like you're using the word Indian, which we'll talk about in another episode, that word itself. It'll get its own episode. But like you're saying that person you're describing is dishonest.
Yeah.
Like, and you're using that culture, a generality of that culture, as a descriptor of someone who is dishonest.
Right.
You might be like, well, that's not what I mean, but that's what you're saying. Right?
Right.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead. And you had some stats about some treaties, didn't you? Just to give a...
Oh, yeah. I was looking it up, and it was like, there's there probably is more accurate statistics, but this was like over 370 treaties that the U.S. has made with tribes that they have not kept. Yeah. Not a single one.
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to bet it's more, because here's why. Because there's like 565 tribes in North America, which that's including Canada. So they made treaties with every single tribe. And did you know the U.S. government's kept 0% of them? And so there you go. So it's not really necessarily would be called what we were saying it was called. It should be called like a government giver, or something. Like
government giver.
Yeah, just kidding. Don't use it at all. Don't use people as a derogatory descriptor.
Yeah.
So, all right, next.
We have circle the wagons. And so when you're talking about circle the wagons, like they would use that term like to, we're going to have to...
Like to say we're surrounded. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like somebody's coming to attack us. They're circling our wagons. They're
like the colonizers.
Yeah.
Yes,
colonizers.
Yeah. Or saying that. When a lot of times it was the opposite way,
Yeah.
like the native people were the ones that should have been protecting themselves.
Yeah, we got to protect ourselves from them. So circling the wagons, that's a native kind of stereotype too. What else?
And then I think just like the phrase, like my tribe, like these people are like my tribe, this group, whatever is like my tribe.
I think this one is going to hit home with some people, because that's like even a trendy like shirt that people put on. These are my tribe, or this is my tribe. And again, we're not picking on you. Please listen and don't be like, well, I'm turning this off now because they spoke to me. Listen deeper, because we're speaking to you. Because a tribe is, like you're getting ready to say, I don't mean to interrupt you, is much deeper than just your friends that you hang out with.
Right. Very much so.
Like a tribe is history and culture and family, and way, 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 way more than just these are the people that I have fun with and drink coffee with on Saturday mornings, or whatever. Get, wear oversized sweatshirts and take pictures with, Like, do you get what I'm saying?
Yes.
It just, the last time I saw that was on an oversized sweatshirt, and it was a bunch of ladies drinking coffee, and it was like, this is my tribe, Like, sorry. Anyway.
So I think those are some of the phrases. Those are quite a bit of them. I think some other things that we could touch on are like native statues. And even, I'll even say this. I remember, like, as a young child, like, going on vacation to, like, Gatlinburg area. And then we drove across to Cherokee, North Carolina, right? Because that's where the Cherokees are from. And, you know, there was a man standing there, a Native man, who was standing there dressed in costume, because that's what it was. It was a costume. It wasn't actually from the Cherokee culture. And he was there, like, and you could go, like, take a picture with him and pay him to, like, take a picture with him. And it's just like, those things, guys, those are just not okay. They're not characters. You're not at Disneyland, and that's not an okay thing to do. So just being aware of situations like that. Now, obviously, the man was doing this on his own accord. You know, nobody was out there making him doing it. But he was just trying to make a living for himself, and he knew that's how he could do it.
And he had to lower himself to that.
Yeah.
Like, that just feels wrong, like dirty almost. Like,
right.
Yeah. Okay.
So just, like, being aware of those kinds of things, I think, are super important. That it's not a character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Character, not a costume.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a culture. Okay. What else? Where are we going? I know we have a few other things we want to get to, so hang with us.
Just, like a lot of people know about, like, turquoise. I said that word funny. Turquoise? Turquoise. Jewelry. And so I think even with that, you know, like, questioning, like, why are you wearing this? Like, where did you get it from? Like, did you actually get it from a Native person and you love it and you think it's, like, beautiful and you want to, like, show people, like, this awesome work that people have done? Like, that's, you know, one thing. But I think a lot of people will make turquoise jewelry that are not Native and then try to sell it pretending they got from a Native person, and you're just ripping people off.
And I think, too, it's crazy to me, speaking of the jewelry thing, this is kind of on the same subject, but we have a lot of vendors here in the communities in which we work, and they'll set up and they'll sell jewelry and things of that nature. Very, very beautiful stuff, right? Jewelry, baskets, sometimes pottery. Awesome stuff. Love it, love it, love it. But we'll bring somebody with us, or we'll see somebody, maybe I'll just phrase this, but we'll see somebody else, like, going up to buy a Native ring or necklace, like a Native made ring or necklace, beautiful, handcrafted, and they always want to negotiate the price lower. Now, I get that everybody wants to save their money the best they can, but that same person wouldn't walk into a jewelry store in the mall and be like, that thing you made right there on a machine, I know you want 1,000, but I'll give you 500 for it. They would just laugh you out of the store if the price is what it is.
Right.
Now, if you really wanted to honor and value the culture and the people that, you know, that made that, then pay what they're asking for, you know, or if you're going to ask in such a way that doesn't demean them and be like, you know what, I don't think it's worth that much, you know, you should take this for it or whatever. Does that make sense? And so, like, a lot of times we think because of who it is, or at least it communicates this, because of who it is and where it is, because maybe it's on a reservation or it's set up on a table somewhere, it doesn't have a big store, then therefore the person that made it, like, we're communicating that their value, like, their worth is a lower dollar amount. Does that make sense? And so, like, even though really that ring or that necklace has more character and handcraftedness to the one that you would pay twice as much for in the store. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and we know people who do that and then resell it. And so it's like so frustrating, because we have people, even in our circle, in our ministry, who will make baskets, for example, and they don't have a lot of money, so they're making these baskets to try to make money for their family, and someone will give them, like, pennies on the dollar what they're worth, and then turn around and flip them for, like, 10 times what they gave them for. Man, that's frustrating, you know. And I get it. I get the whole whatever about it. I'm not trying to be like you can't ever, like, sell something for more than what you gave for it, but, like, they're getting them way down to near nothing, and then anyway.
They know what they're doing.
Yeah. I didn't mean to go off on a tangent, but that's kind of that same idea of jewelry. So, what else? Okay, I wanted to read this. I know we kind of got away from the costume one. We're fine. We're only at 39 minutes right now. I wanted to go back a little bit to the costume one. Okay, and read a little bit of a scenario to you. Okay, so is everybody cool with that?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's do this. So this is an article I found on nativeappropriations.com. You can go there if you want to. It was written 10 years ago, so to see if this applies today. So let's set the scene. So the scene is you walk into school, work, or a Halloween party, and everything's going well. It's that time of year, and you're wearing an awesome costume. Everything's good, but then you're there, and across the room it says, and across the room in your joyous revelry you spot it. Across the room, a friend or an acquaintance is dressed as a, and in quotes, Indian. You know what it looks like. They have the buckskin, the beads, the feathers, the headdress, war paint, and then the author says, and if you're anything like me, you mentally go, and then they have a lot of expletive there, like kind of thing. And so like you walk into a party, everything's going well, and then you see that person, whether it could be your family, your friend, or your coworker dressed as a Native person in the very costume that we said that wasn't good. Okay, so step one, what do you do? Like, what would you guys do?
Well, obviously it's awkward really fast. So I think some of these just depends on the relational aspect that you have with people, but obviously if it's somebody that's close to me, I'm going to be like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, this isn't acceptable. This isn't okay. Can we go change your costume? Can we leave and go find another
You're
one?
an idiot. If you know the
We can just run to Walmart real fast and find something different. Like, this isn't.
Yeah. This is a Native person who wrote this, and he said, here's what he admits that he's not good at confrontation. Like, he's not good at confronting people, so he's writing this as what should be done, not necessarily how he would handle it the best. He said, I would take a second look, which is step one. Who is the person that is dressed up? Take a second look. Do I know them well? How well do I know them? Are they older than me? Are they younger than me? Are they under the age of 10? Because then their parents dressed them. Is it my boss?
Yeah.
Is it a person of authority who can affect my life, career, or future? All of those will change the way I approach the situation. I don't scold children, he says. I don't go yell at a 3-year-old about cultural appropriation.
Right, of course.
Even though you may want to. He said, I think carefully about how I would encounter this person and how it would play out for future relationships. So I do take the time to stop and think. None of these situations stop me from talking to the person. He's going to still talk, but so he's not saying that if it's my boss, I just won't say anything because it could hurt me or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm just going to approach it differently. And then the next step 2, am I going to engage? I don't argue that you have to be the costume police at every moment of every day. Like, your job isn't walk around like, who's
Maybe that could be your costume.
the costume police. He said, I want everybody to be comfortable confronting racism, cultural appropriation. It can be hard and scary, so take a deep breath. Am I ready to go in? Am I feeling strong, comfortable? And he goes on and talks about some other stuff. He makes some jokes. And he says, all honesty, I don't confront people a lot. I'd be much more comfortable sending them a strongly worded email. But nevertheless, to do it well, you have to confront them in person. So prepare the response. If I go up to someone at a party and tell them their costume is hurtful and offensive, they're not going to thank me and take off their headdress. Okay, so just be prepared for that. The first response, 99.9% of the time, will be defensiveness. Okay, which of course makes sense. They're standing there in a skimpy costume with war paint on. They're going to be embarrassed and they're going to defend their choice. Here's exactly what they will say to you. People aren't original with how they defend their costume. Oh, so he says, here's exactly what they'll say. People aren't that original how they defend them. And he'll say, and here are some things you can say back. Okay. Oh, here's what they'll say to you. He says, number one, the first thing they'll say to you is, I did not do it to be offensive. That's going to be their first thing. Well, I didn't mean it.
Right.
And we get that all the time. Here, it doesn't matter if it's a costume or another situation. We'll say, this is not okay, or, giving a lesson on something or teaching on something. Well, I'm not doing it to be offensive.
Right. So this is a phrase that I heard, it's been several years back, but it sticks with me, is that your impact is far greater than your intent.
Oh, yep. Impact
and so
intent. Yep.
Anytime that you're thinking of this, it probably isn't your intention to actually hurt someone, but if the impact of what you're doing actually does, it always outweighs that.
Right. Yeah, that's important to understand. Okay, so if I lost you, come back with me. Thinking about this conversation, they're dressed up. He confronts them, and the first thing is, I didn't do it to be offensive. Okay, and he says this in response to that. If they say, I didn't do it to be offensive, say, I know. I realize you didn't pick the costume to be offensive. I'm not saying you're a bad person. I'm just saying these costumes are really hurtful to Native peoples because they turn us into fantasy creatures based on harmful stereotypes. Okay, this is written from a Native person. It's really good, right? Like, it's exactly what we were saying. Okay, their next response will be, dude, get over it. You're getting way too sensitive. It's just Halloween. Now, we hear this all the time. People call people snowflakes because they get offended or whatever. Like, why are you so offended about everything? But like, it's not your culture that's being offended usually when you're the one saying that. And he said it might just be Halloween, but these issues play out all year. The costumes and stereotypes are symptoms of a much deeper issue. Agree? Yeah. And so it's not just Halloween, right? We talked about Julia Haven had in her show notes, like her prep notes, that if somebody painted their face blackface and showed up at a Halloween party, and like they're not gonna be like, dude, get over it. It's just Halloween. Right. You know, like we would be like, that's terrible. Like what's it's canceled. Is that what you call it nowadays? Like you get canceled if you showed up in blackface, right?
As they probably should.
Yeah, we're not disagreeing with that. But the fact of the matter is, you would, and then if you show up as a Native person, people would be like, "Oh, you look cute, you know, great." And then he said they would respond again, "Get over it." And he says again, "I'm just saying that your costume is hurtful and offensive to Native peoples, and you might want to reconsider wearing it next time. But telling me to get over it does not hurt the situation." Help the situation. So what do you think about the get over it comment?
It's just a deflection so that instead of you having to focus on yourself, you can put it back on the other person.
Yeah, a deflection. Don't have to own it.
Yeah.
Dude, get over it. Yeah. Well, and two, I always say this, it's hard to get over something that hasn't stopped. Like when you say get over something that's very hurtful to your culture as a whole, or your nation as a whole, or your people as a whole, like it's hard to get over something that's still going on, right? You know, we would never tell people in a certain culture to get over tragic things that have happened to them. Therefore, you can't thus say the same thing to somebody else. He gives a specific example, which I think is funny, yet paints a really good picture. So in this same scenario, the person says, "I'm Irish." I'm Irish, and I don't get offended by that dude over there in a leprechaun costume. Like this is this is funny because he says that's good that you're not offended, but a leprechaun isn't a real person. And there's not a contemporary community of leprechauns who are undergoing active colonialism and fighting against misrepresentation. I totally feel for all the leprechauns living in poverty in the U.S. while the government continues to systematically marginalize them through ongoing policies that ignore their inherent sovereignty, indigenous rights to their land. So he's joking with, him about this. He says, while the Irish may have had a history of oppression in the U.S., no one can argue that they are still marginalized or would be categorized as anything other than part of the majority culture. He said, maybe that was too wordy, but you get the point. You can't defend, like, again, by saying the whole leprechaun, maybe that's an extreme example, but people do that.
I don't think it's extreme because it's pointing out that when a leprechaun is a character.
Yeah.
And so
this is on the Lucky Charms box.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like when people are dressing as someone that's Native, it's almost making them a character.
Right.
And he's pointing out, we are still here.
Yeah, and almost like you're proving my point by what you're saying.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. I love that. Dude, leprechauns aren't real. And he says, then they may respond with this. I'm Pocahontas. Like, I'm not just a character. I'm Pocahontas. I'm Tiger Lily from Peter Pan. I'm a historical figure, or I'm some other fictional character. He says, respond with this. That's cool. But all those are based off the same hurtful stereotypes. Have you seen Peter Pan? It's not, it doesn't paint Native people in a good light. He said, what makes the red man red? He said, really? Pocahontas? You say that like it's a good stereotype. But she's an over-sexualized woman who talks to animals and trees, is only famous because she saves a white dude. Yeah. And it says, and if you were the real Pocahontas, you'd also be 9 to 12 years old. That makes sense? And so, and then, guys, Pocahontas, do some research. It's much, much deeper than just this fictional Disney character that they create. Because the one on Disney is fictional because it's nothing like the reality. Right. But Pocahontas was a real person. And then, I'm almost done. Because there's a couple I think are super important. He says, but are zombies offensive to zombie people? Are cowboys offensive to cowboys? Are doctors offensive to doctors? He says, again, zombies are not real. And cowboys and doctors are a profession, not a group of marginalized people. He said, yes, I think a geisha costume or a Mexican costume or a pimp costume or any other racialized costume are offensive, yes. But those others are professions, not cultures and not people. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And then he says, and then without a doubt, here's their trump card. I'm Cherokee, so get off my back. Mm-hmm. Or my great-great-grandma was Cherokee, or maybe even a Cherokee princess, so get off me. Mm-hmm. And then he says he usually responds with something in Cherokee, and they look at him like he's crazy, and he basically asks them, do they speak Cherokee? But he says, if they say that, say, that's great. I encourage you to learn more about your heritage because Cherokee regalia looks nothing like what you're wearing. Mm-hmm. We don't wear Plains war bonnets. And when you learn more, you'll see that Cherokee folks who know and represent their heritage would not be walking around dressed anything like what you are. If anything, being Cherokee holds you to a higher standard. That is not how I would honor my heritage ever. Also, we don't have, nor have we ever had princesses, so you might want to check your facts. And so you may be listening to this and be like, dang, he just spoke to me. My grandmother was a Cherokee princess. Cherokees never had princesses. Okay. All right. And then he basically goes on, and that was him preparing for the outcomes. And he says, think about what you're hoping for. He basically says, don't go into the conversation expecting them to be like, oh, you're so right. I'll just go take my costume off. I'm sorry I offended you. He said people will genuinely, obviously, want to defend themselves. But if you can even get them to take one step in the proper direction, that's better, right? Like to think before they act. And then he says, when you engage, he says, do it in a way that's humble and you're not arrogant and mean about it. Like you're trying to be gracious, but you confront it. You do actually confront it. Mm-hmm. Like to not confront something that is wrong is complicit in the wrong, right? Like we all do that. And sometimes we would sit here and blast somebody over doing something, yet we saw them do it and not confront it. Does that make sense?
It even makes me think of James 4:17. Anyone then who knows the right thing to do yet fails to do it is guilty of sin. And so it's like, that it's right to confront these things, whether that be somebody dressing up as a Native person or maybe saying something that is not appropriate, culturally appropriate, and for you to just, not say anything and walk away. Is sin, according to James. So,
let's do it.
Yeah.
All right.
And I think just, kind of to wrap things up, I'm going to assume more than likely if you're listening to this podcast, you're a believer. And so that's what this always should boil back down to is the gospel and the proper view of God's creation. Mm-hmm. And so realizing that Native people are made in the image of God and they hold value and worth, and we should treat them with dignity and respect. Mm-hmm. And so if these are issues that many, many, many people say are issues, then we should listen. Yeah. And we should respect them. And we should honor them as who they are.
Absolutely. And so would you say this is a gospel issue, yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I know somebody's going to be listening and be like, well, this is great, but this isn't really that big of a deal. But if it doesn't affect you and you don't know people that it affects directly, you can't really make that statement because it is a big deal. And a lot of what we do is trying to speak truth into the life of people and show, honestly, that we're not like that. Like we really do love you and value you, and we want to share the greatest message ever with you, and that's the message of Jesus. That's the hope of Jesus, and where true identity is really, really found is in Christ. Right? And that you can be a Native person and follow Jesus. You can be a Native person and come to know Christ and respond without any preconceived idea of how to do so. You can come and stay a member of your tribe and follow Jesus. You don't have to look like me, talk like me, act like me. Right. And so to me, it is a gospel issue. Yeah. All right. Any final thought, Julia?
If you want to keep learning, just some resources we could point you to. I will give the disclaimer that these are not Christians, but just Native voices who've done research and put a lot of thought into it. But Illuminative's a great account to follow on Instagram. So is Joey Clift. He has a lot of videos that just kind of talk about appropriation versus appreciation. And it's like Joey Clift with I think 6 eyes. I couldn't really count. My eyes were getting all fuzzy. But either 6 or 7 eyes. And then there's also Not My Mascot. That's the name. Videos on YouTube where you can hear Native people talk about what Native mascots mean to them and how they feel about it.
Okay. And then there is one. Okay, so say you want more of a Christian perspective. a Native Christian perspective, there is an episode of Theology in the Raw. Theology in the Raw is a podcast. I'm not endorsing everything on it because I don't really know. I haven't listened to it that much, but I did listen to this one episode of Theology in the Raw, and he is interviewing a Navajo man who follows Jesus. What's the Navajo man's name? Mark Charles. And so he gives both his Christian and Native perspective on some of these issues and even much, much, much deeper issues. So search up in your podcast thing, Theology in the Raw, and then look for Mark Charles episode. Okay? It's really, really, really good. That'll give you the Christian perspective on some of this stuff. Okay, we hope you've enjoyed listening. We hope it's been encouraging to you. If you have any questions. Oh, wait, Julie's got one more thing. Don't hang up. Don't hang up.
The episode is 9:45, and it's called A Native American Perspective on Christian Nationalism.
Okay, guys, listen. I'm saying this. It's really, really, really good. A Native American Perspective on Christian Nationalism. Episode 945, Theology in the Raw. Look it up. Listen. It's really, really, really good. So again, we hope that this episode's been helpful to you. We hope that it really, like in a good way, stepped on some toes, like so that we can do some growing. And better, if you have questions, feel free to follow up. If they're really hurtful, then just keep them to yourself. But, we have feelings too. And so if you want to know more, want to know where we got some of this information, you can let us know. But yeah, we hope to have another episode out in a week or so that will help you better as we address some of this. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Live Love Ministries podcast.
We hope it was encouraging, made you think, and broadened your understanding of our mission and the mission of making disciples of all nations. You can find out more information about our ministry at www.liveloveministries.org.
If God leads you to partner with us financially through prayer, or if you're interested in bringing a mission team to Arizona or one of our other locations, you can find that information on our website as well. Until next time, keep loving people and keep pointing people to Jesus, and we'll see you then.